In this video, I wanted to just give an introduction to statistics using R. Um, this video is assuming that you already have some familiarity given some of the data camp assignments or the first class in R. So what we're gonna do is just go ahead and give an introduction to data sets that are built in R. So if you type under the console in R, if you type the function data, that actually gives you a list of data sets that are readily available in any session in R. So you can see air passengers, and basically this is a description of the data set. So for instance, if you want to go ahead and look at a specific data set, you just have to go to um, call that particular data set, and it's basically readily available right there. Um, one example um, of data sets that are common to use in practice with R is the car's data set. Basically, what it contains is the speed of the car and the distance. So it's a generally it's a very speed and stopping distance of cars is a very easy data set, but it is good to illustrate regression analysis. Um, so a couple of things about data sets in R. You can go ahead and subset some parts of the data set by using brackets, and basically the first when you use brackets, you basically subset the original data set to the observations that you want. So for instance, if you want to look at only the first, let's say, 5 observations, you can say 1 colon means 2, so from 1 to 5, and then you put a comma and leave the next parameter empty. That means that you only want the first 5 observations. If you only want the first variable, you can say cars, let's say the first 5 observations, and you want to only see the first variable, so you would write 1 here, and that is only the information about the first variable. This is a very important um, exercise in R to be able to look at subsets of the original data set. One thing that might be important for you, functions that are important for you to look at, is the row means, which is the means of every row. If you want to see what is the average of every row, you would just write the function row means and the data set or data frame that you want to apply it to. And basically that is the mean of every row. If you want the column means, you would just write col means, and then put inside the function the data frame that you want to look at. So that's the average speed, and that's the average distance, stopping distance. Right, so if you want to look at a graph, let's say a histogram of, let's say, the variable speed, you can do something like this. Hist function stands for is for histogram, and you can actually use the variable cars. Let's say we want to look at speed. So if you want to subset, if you want to take an original a variable from inside this cars data set, you can do the subset that we did. For instance, car in brackets, you use the column 1, or you can also use the $, and when you write cars $, you will see the 2 variables appear there, so you can choose one of them. The main parameter within any graph that you want is basically is a way to put there the title of the graph. So whatever you want to write in this, the title of this histogram is, so let's write something like histogram of speed. You will actually put a comma for every parameter, new parameter you want. So for instance, you can do something like besides the histogram, you can do something like color of that histogram. So you can say color equal to red or something else. And basically you will see the histogram there. Something that you might want to change is the number of columns, and that is another parameter. Let's say in breaks. Breaks is basically the number of columns you want to see. So instead of just having 5, you can do something like 10. And that will basically change how the histogram looks. Something else, if you want to change the label for the x-axis, you can do something like x label, XLAB, stands for label for the x-axis, and then you can write whatever you feel is appropriate, so something like speed. And something I wanted to mention is that I just use the upper arrow in the keyboard to just look at the previous command. You can look at other commands that you have used in this session, so that might come in handy. So that's basically how you would get a graph of a specific variable. Now, if you want to get a graph that combines two quantitative variables, you might want to use the plot function, and that is create a scatter plot of the two variables. So one thing that you want to do is use the two variables. You can use cars $speed or cars and cars $distance. So one option is to just do this cars speed and then separate it by a comma, cars distance, and that would plot the two variables. You can add other things like a title in other options that you want to. So what that will do is that it will select the second variable to be the variable on the y-axis and the first variable to be the variable on the x-axis. And of course you can do you can change these labels of how the x-axis appears or the y-axis appears. So you can do something like x label is equal to speed, and you can do y label is equal to distance if you don't want to see the original labels in there. So that's one way to create histograms and scatter plots. This is something that you will do a lot of times in this class, so hopefully this is helpful.